As I mentioned, Heath brothers live down the street from BP, and they are one of the famous trios in jazz. Tootie is still traveling around. He's 88 years of age. I have not seen him in a while, but he's still out there, still traveling. I think he's still playing. Jimmy Heath became a professor of music at the CUNY College in New York, and he made quite a name for himself over the years. I remember him playing his alto horn when he couldn't play. He was just starting on alto sax, and he kept a lot of the neighbors up with his alto horn through the night. But he developed into quite a jazz emissary. And he made a lot of noise in Philadelphia before he became internationally known. And he became internationally known. He wrote music and he played music. He had a band in Philadelphia. And I do on one occasion, he invited a name by the name of Charlie Parker, I believe, in Philadelphia. A kid had a run-in with a trolley car, and the kid lost his leg. Jimmy called on Charlie Parker to come to Philadelphia because they wanted to do a benefit for the kid and take care of his hospital bills and take care of his family. And Parker consented. He came to Philadelphia, and he played for the kid. And that was one of the things that Jimmy had to deal with. I think he's been gone now for, I guess, about 2 years now. We lost him at the age of 93. And Percy, the oldest of the trio, Percy was an airman. He was a lieutenant in Tuskegee Airmen, Percy Heath. And I remember him coming home on furlough in 1994. And he had his uniform on. And many of us had not seen a hometown lieutenant. We may have seen an African-American in the paper somewhere, but this was a homie who lived down the street from me with the bar on his chest and the gold bars, Percy Heath. And when he came home and came out of the house one day, somebody said, "There's Percy." And it looked like all the women in the neighborhood came out and were hugging and kissing Percy Heath because he was a lieutenant. In 1944, there was a war. He was a Tuskegee Airman, a homie, living down the street, you know. Hey, big thing. You know, they were beating pots and pans. The same thing would happen when Joe Louis fought and knocked the guy out. You could go into an African-American neighborhood in South Philadelphia and maybe any other neighborhood. And you didn't have to have an air conditioner on. There were no air conditioners in that time anyway, when Louis was fighting. early in his career, and you could hear the fight because the windows were up. And in any neighborhood, you could hear everybody saying, when's he going to knock him out? When's he going to knock him out? Then you hear the counting. Lewis is down, he's got him down, and the guy's getting up, and so forth, and so forth, and so on. That's the kind of neighborhood that we had in South Philly back in the day when I was coming up. People helping people. On Saturdays, we had what do you call it? A gentleman who had a wrench to the fire plug. He would turn on the fire plug, and we'd watch the street down. And by 11 o'clock, the street is sparkling clean. Even paint the utility poles a different color, or paint the curb, whatever the case may be, you know. We just did it because there was a sense of community. If your neighbor slept late and didn't come down to help out in the cause, you might scrub their steps for them. You might scrape their pavement for them. And the next Saturday, they might do the same for you. We had that community spirit in the neighborhood. Nobody had any great amount of money. The kids, we made our own fun. We played hide and seek and spin the bottle and dumb games and, you know, whatever the case may be. Half ball was the thing. Anybody know about half ball? Yeah. Where you take a rubber ball and you cut it in half and you steal your mama's broomstick and cut the business end of it off, and you use that to swat this stealing half ball. That was a big game. It was a big game back in the day. into radio in Detroit. Left Philadelphia, went to Detroit on a vacation. My brothers were there. I had gone there after WW2, raising families, doing quite well. Come out here, Bob, this is a nice place. Detroit was wide open. I was there about a month, I guess. On vacation, came back to Philadelphia. I liked it so much, I went back to Detroit to live after 3 months. I got there about August of 1964. And I got a job in insurance. There's an African-American insurance agency. It was the big one. I was hired at the auxiliary plant. They gave me a test and whatnot. I had an insurance license and whatever the case, needed to get in. They said, you're gonna make a lot of money. Detroit is wide open. They had doctors and lawyers with blue-collar workers maybe living next door. Because everyone had a job, or 2 jobs. People were living high because of the automobile industry. Glass, plastic, tires, whatever the case may be, went into the cars. So Detroit was wide open. I could have had maybe 3 jobs in a period of maybe a month's time. New guy in town, got a job maybe at City Hall, doing maybe sanitation work, but it was a job, a start anyway. So, anyway, I went upstairs because I saw a sign as I left the insurance office on the 2nd floor. It said WGPR FM. And I said, wow, 2 days at once, Lord, or fate, or whatever it was that led me over here, I'll go up and see. I met the general manager. It's a small station, 1,000 watt station. They said, we got a guy leaving in about maybe 3-4 days. I said, well, the guy downstairs, he said he has a guy leaving in a week. I'm gonna take a job downstairs, and you got a guy that's gonna leave in 3 days. Gee, I wonder. He said, maybe I'll call you first. Maybe he'll call you first. Go home and see. He called me first. So I went to WGPR FM at a very low salary, the princely sum of $1.25 an hour. That's all he could pay. I could work overtime, but I could make over $1.25 an hour, no overtime. So I had the job at the Ford Motor Company so that I could afford to work in Detroit in radio. So I worked at the Ford Motor Company for 6 months so that I could afford to stay in radio. I did not want to give up the radio job after all that I had, went to get it. So that was my entry into radio in Detroit, Michigan. I used to trade stories with WDAS in Philly. It was the hometown. I said, hey, you guys need anything? If you need any stories, anything coming out of Detroit? He said, yeah, if you have anything, give us a call. And we'll do the same to you. If we have anything in Philly, we'll give you a call, so we'll share. So for about 6 or 7 months, when I had something happen in Detroit that I thought Philly might be interested in, I would call them. And I'd say, in that voice, Bob Perkins in Detroit, or WDS in Philadelphia. And I said, hey, the general manager likes your work. You a Philly guy? I said, yeah, I'm a Philly guy. So you want to come home? I said, yeah, you pay my way, my fruit, my freight, and so forth, find me a place to live, I'll come back home. They did it. So in 1969, I went back in Philadelphia at WDAS radio. And things kept happening fortuitously for me, but unfortunately for a lot of other people. Because my director, my news director, died about 2 years after I was there. So I took his job. The editorial director died about 1 year later, 1973. I took his job. I didn't ask for it. They said, you're doing pretty good as the news director, in news. We're going to make you the editorial director. If you don't make it, we'll kick you out. I made it. I guess I was there for about 19 years. I did the editorials for 13 years. It was one of the few African-American stations that had an editorial policy. There were a lot of people who played African-American music, but they didn't have an editorial policy. We had an editorial policy, one every day. And we spread them out maybe 3 or 4 times a week. I did maybe 3 or 4 editorials. They were somewhat successful. And one of the people that was here tonight is Andrew Carn, who was a state representative at that time, a state representative that we got into office. Andrew was in the building, and it's amazing. When WDAS endorsed an African-American candidate, usually they won. And I was the one. That's Andrew there, Andrew Carn. I wasn't responsible, nor was the station responsible for endorsing them if they messed up. And some of them, we endorsed Chaka Patel. He got into office. We endorsed him for state representative. He ran for the Congress. We endorsed him for the Congress. We endorsed several other people. Dwight Evans is U.S. Congressman now. I guess I'm guilty of that. It wasn't my idea. They said, do it. He said, you opposed to it? I said, no, not opposed. So I did it. So I think we got about 10 or 11 people in city council, state representatives, and even to the U.S. Congress. So when DAS, which was the voice of, at that time, the voice of the African-American community at that time. It was a very powerful voice for a relatively small radio station. So every Saturday for 20 years, in addition to working at DAS, every Saturday I was at WHYY from 8 o'clock until 12 midnight. So I had a job and a half. I also wanted to write a little bit, get into the writing field, journalism. I went to a community station, a community paper, I beg your pardon, and he said, is there any help? He said, yeah, but we can't pay you. But, we'll use your work for free, if you don't mind. So I said, okay. So I started working for the Philadelphia New Observer. The Observer went belly up about 13 years ago, but I did an editorial column for them at a jazz column for 23 years. So that was in addition to HYY and DAA. So I was all over the place. And in addition, there's a little club, there was a club at Washington Lane and Limekiln Pike. The owner called it the Blue Note. And the Blue Note in New York said, you can't call your club that because the Blue Note has been taken some years ago. Do you recall? The owner said, yeah, we'll change the name. So he changed the name. But we didn't care about the name of the club, really. He didn't care about the name of the club. He cared whether it was successful, and it was successful. So every Monday, for 5 years, maybe 6 years, I was the MC at this particular club, in addition to all the other stuff that I was doing. And Tony Williams, anybody know Tony Williams, the great alto saxophonist from Philadelphia? Tony Williams and his quartet played every Monday, and I was there for about 5 years.
That's not to WRTI, right?
Oh, RTI, I volunteered for that.
Okay.
Can't remember the exact year, but I was there for 25 years.
Right. Okay.
And I started as a volunteer. There was nobody involved, I just,
Right.
just started. So after a while, they changed their format from all jazz to double format, classical music and jazz. And then the people that they brought in, they paid them. And I said, hey, I was here too. So the podcast, you can find wherever you have an outlet, whatever your electronic outlet is. It's stay tuned, bp.com. So that's kind of my story, something in a nutshell. That's where the 58 years, if they went. Maybe I left out some stuff, but that's my story, and I ain't taking none of it back.
Oh, boy.